You are listening to the podcast by The Pulse. We bring you insights and analysis on issues that matter to the nation.
Former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh had once described Maoism as the greatest internal threat. Tackling Maoism continues to remain a major challenge for the government. To discuss this, I am being joined by Dr. Anshuman Behera, Associate Professor, National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bangalore. Anshuman, who is a long-time friend, has been following Maoism since long. Anshuman, welcome to the Pulse podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. In a recent article in Telegraph newspaper, you have romanticized with Maoism by arguing that the government should go for a dialogue with the left ultra. This at a time the nation state is drawing the final battle lines in the war against the Maoists. Your comment.
Okay. Let me start with my position that it's unfair to call it romanticizing the Maoist.
Okay.
The article is all about making a case for a dialogue between the Maoist and the government. I'll give you two explanations why I actually wrote this.
Okay.
This is not the first time that somebody is writing or making a case for the dialogue between the Maoist and the government. In the past also, both the Maoist and the state but have actually given their conditional kind of eagerness to sort of go for a dialogue and a negotiation. You would remember in 2003-04, the Andhra Pradesh government under the Chandrababu Naidu leadership, the chief minister, the erstwhile PWG People's War Group also entered into a peace dialogue with the Andhra Pradesh government. Of late, we have been seeing civil society organizations and many other well-meaning people. They also want that a dialogue process will bring down the kind of violence. But at this point of time, as you rightly mentioned, that the movement, the Maoist movement, is on its terminal decline. Why there is a need for a kind of dialogue? Because there is a kind of lingering the process we are observing. Because one hand the state is rightfully claiming that the Maoist related violence incidents has gone down drastically. Yes, it has gone down drastically. To qualify this point, one can give a lot of credit to the state security forces, in one hand. And the second, but the most crucial one, which doesn't find a kind of mention in many of the mainstream narrative, is like the Maoists are slowly and very steadily losing the kind of popular support they used to actually demand or command. In the early days of their kind of so-called movement for the people. I would add that the tribal, which is very unfairly treated by the Maoist in many cases, have actually in most part of India, like the 10 states where the Maoist had critical presence, they are losing their support base from the local communities. When they are losing their support base, the established narrative that the tribals actually support the Maoist and the Maoist also derive a lot of legitimacy from there. A dialogue process will puncture a lot of these kind of prejudices and the rhetoric kind of narrative that most mainstream media and the ill-meaning civil societies actually try to establish. So that was the point. I was saying by lingering this movement, both the Maoist and to some extent the state, they have been very unfair to the local communities there. The local communities, they need a kind of better life, and to live with a fear of violence is never a easy thing for the local communities there, the tribal and the other marginalized groups. So it is high time for the state and the Maoists to call off this movement and come, because if you see that the movement is now limited to only some small pockets in Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Odisha. but it is just that ego that the Maoists think, okay, or some leadership within the Maoist, okay, would think that, okay, they by coming for a dialogue or by negotiating with the government, okay, they might get a kind of feeling that they lost it, So I'm maintaining a kind of position here that nobody loses, nobody wins. Okay, end of the day, these are the people who need to be come to the mainstream, and that is how this government and the earlier government has repeatedly said, okay, shun your violence. Okay, you leave the violent path and come for a dialogue. That is exactly what I written.
Okay, Anshuman, in your article, you have also argued for the withdrawal of the Central Armed Forces deployed in and around Maoist-infested areas. You have further suggested that the Maoists should come up with clear demands, quote-unquote, concerning the people. But do you really think the Maoists really work for the people?
Okay, this is exactly my point was in the article. If you see a lot of people, there is two important or dominant narratives in dealing with the Maoists in India. One, that they are merely a law and order problem. Okay, so there has to be a security approach dealing with the Maoist. That is one kind of a narrative, which is the dominant narrative people follow. The other dominant narrative is that the Maoists are necessarily representing the grievances of the people. Okay, but this narrative has been the kind of a narrative that most of the civil society members and the pro kind of marginalized section people, and as the Supreme Court said, some of the sympathetic towards the Maoist ideology, they subscribe. Okay, so I wanted to sort of call the block. Okay, that if you see the entire Maoist document, okay, one problem. This is a larger article I will be coming up with in a couple of months' time.
Okay.
One important thing what we miss all the time, that when you see what is the objective of the Maoist movement in India, okay, it doesn't actually spell out the well-being or the grievances of the local people they came to represent. Okay, whether they represent or not, or the people have given them that power, that remains a big question mark. Okay. But then let's come to the why I say the Maoists should come clear on their demands. Okay, so we had a similar kind of movement in the neighboring country of Nepal that started in 1996 and ended in 2006. Okay, so if you study the Nepal Maoist movement, you see that there are 40-point demands. Okay, the 40-point demands were very clear. Okay, it was against the monarchy, it was for democracy, okay, and it was for a constitution. And surprisingly, Indian Maoist movement had a lot of ideological and otherwise support for this movement. Okay, in the Maoist thing. Okay, if you see the success of the Nepal Maoist movement was two important things. One, that it actually established or re-established a democratic form of governance in Nepal, whether it's stable or not. But then we are talking to a democratically elected government in Nepal. Okay. The second, okay, after a lot of disagreement, you have a constitution there. Okay, you had multiple, but and nonetheless you have a constitution there. These are the tangible kind of product of a Maoist movement one can claim. But when you come to the Indian Maoist movement, you would see that you deal with a lot of confusion. Okay, so the Maoist kind of narrative is very rhetoric in nature. Okay, to the extent that they have not come out of this semi-colonial, semi-feudal kind of narrative against whom they claim to fight. So that cannot be a demand. Okay, that's just an emotional outburst. Okay, that cannot be a demand with which you can go to the negotiation table and say, okay, this is the demand we need to fulfill. Okay, if the Maoists have some specific demands, say for example, implementation of the Forest Right Act, so spell it out. But we do not see, okay, such issues actually figure every now and then here and there.
Exactly.
But they do not come as, but these are not the exclusive Maoist demands. Okay, these are the demands of multiple small or big popular movements, those who have nothing to do with the Maoist.
Correct.
Okay, so that is where, the point is the Maoists have to, the government has to tell, or we, the intellectuals, we need to ask them Like, what exactly are your demands? Okay. So if the demands are something extraordinary, let's talk it out. But then if the demand is like a very rhetoric, it becomes very difficult for the dialogue. Okay. Let me come to your first question, withdrawal of the Central Armed Police Forces. Okay. So there is one claim that, and rightfully so, that the violent incidents has come down drastically. Yes, it has come down drastically. Okay. So in that sense, every state in the process of fighting the Maoists, they have developed their own elite forces. Like in Odisha, for example, you have kind of special operation guard. Okay. Correct. In Andhra Pradesh, you have Greyhound. Okay. Similarly, then you have district voluntary forces. Okay. In each of the states that experience a Maoist kind of thing, you have such forces. Okay. And now that you have like the violent incidents coming down drastically, and it is limited to the smaller pockets of Chhattisgarh only. Okay. Every now and then, sometimes an occasional attacks in Gadchiroli and all that. Okay. The withdrawal of the security forces in terms of the Central Armed Police Forces will actually create a very emotional kind of a thing for the local people. At times, what happens, the local people, those who have no business with the Maoist, they feel certain intimidated by the overpresence of the Central Armed Police Forces there. In my extensive travel in these areas, I can tell you, the tribals are not, the kind of, violence-loving people. They are very peaceful, fun-loving people. Okay. So to that extent, since the state police force and the elite forces that have been actually, brought out to fight the Maoists, they are capable of dealing with the small-scale kind of violence that the Maoists are actually pushed to right now. The state, since they are able to take care of it, in a sign of willingness to deal with certain grievances of the Maoists, it will be a very good step if the state decides to withdraw the Central Armed Police Forces.
Okay, Anshuman, but I have a submission on your particular comment. There is a popular argument that if government will do a ceasefire with Maoists, then there is an impending danger that they would target the local population, number one. Number two, because there is a background to it. These Maoists, they don't believe in democracy. They want to overthrow the government. They don't believe in constitution. I'm not saying that. Their own literature, I have been through as a journalist, that the own literature, the Maoist literature pronounce so. So, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah. So, once you withdraw your Central Armed Police Forces, the Maoists resort to violence. Already they are losing their popular support. Okay. This will send out a very negative image of the Maoist. Okay. Because the international NGOs and the ill-meaning kind of, NGOs and all that, and some of the civil societies who sort of, glorify this violence of the Maoists, some of the literature glorify it to the extent of, revolutionary violence and all that. So they always target or put the blame on the state, saying the state is the source of all sorts of coercion and coercive measures. Now, if the state withdraws its, CAPF, like Central Armed Police Forces, and the Maoists resort to the violence, there is a high chance that they will be completely discredited. So in that regard, it is important, on a trial and error method, it is important for the state to withdraw its forces and see to what extent the Maoist can resort. Okay, after withdrawing, the state takes a unilateral kind of ceasefire kind of thing. If they withdraw and the Maoists resort to the violence, so then that is where you can, one, discredit them, completely discredit their legitimacy. That, these are the people necessarily believe in violence. Okay, they don't believe in democracy. That will delegitimize them. Then the state can again redeploy these forces, and now you go all out and finish them. If at all you find, they are resorting to violence.
But Anshuman, as a journalist, I have also covered Maoism. Intellectual sympathizers of Maoists argue that the left ultras fight for the lack of development. But you see, the Maoist attacks are taking place in the areas where there is development push from the government. Now, what is your comment on this?
This is a very disturbed kind of thing that a lot of people actually subscribe. The whole the issue of development is little placed in a very slippery slope, I would say. Okay, so one need to actually get into the very understanding of development. Okay, the state also commits certain mistakes. The tribal area, what sort of development, that can be a different debate. But then the lack of development leads to political violence. It is a very discredited kind of narrative. That is one. And the second, why do the Maoists do not want any sort of development? Because once the development comes, okay, that I've seen through Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, parts of Andhra Pradesh and all that. Wherever the road is being built and there is a telephone tower and all that, the Maoists think the local population on whom they are completely dependent, either through coercion or through some propaganda and all that, there is a high possibility that they might go to certain urban centers and they get aware of their rights and all that, and they will not be under the Maoist hold anymore. Okay, that is the biggest kind of an apprehension of the Maoist. Okay, this is a larger plan of the Maoist to keep the people away from all sorts of things that is happening there. But at the same time, the state also somewhere it fails to take the local people into their confidence.
Achha.
Okay, that is where, by not taking the local people into the confidence, okay, somehow, and more than that, okay, this is a very not so liked kind of, truth I would like to bring to your notice. Okay. There is certain nexus among the local administration and the contractors there.
Okay.
The whole criminal network that functions there, they are anti-state, okay, and they are anti-people. Okay, but the poor guys who are actually part of this great nation, okay, sometimes they are at the receiving end. Okay, they do not get the fruit of the development. Okay, they bear the brunt of all the violence and the counter violence kind of thing that goes on between the Maoist and the state. Okay, and sometimes and the most of the times they are blamed or they are accused of being the sympathizers of the Maoist, which they are not.
Anshuman, because the Maoists have been systematically targeting the instruments of development, such as bridges, schools, mobile towers, etc. Do you think this left ultra fear Achhe Din?
Yeah, of course they do. That is exactly I say. Like, the ignorance, lack of development and all those things, okay, makes their narrative around which their propaganda on which they base, okay, or they picture the state and the democratic form of government as necessarily an evil or an enemy or responsible for all sorts of mishappening for the tribal people. Once these developments come and as you put it, Achhe Din comes, okay, it becomes okay. The bluff of the Maoist will be called.
Anshuman, as we all know, economic resources play an important role to fight any war. How sufficient the Maoists are financially at present, especially after post-demonetization, after post-COVID, how they are placed financially and what are their current source of funding?
If you can one sentence, I can tell you that the financially they are broke. But the problem with that economic sources started with the split of the Maoist long back, maybe 2012-13, when there was a division in the Maoist. Odisha Maoists was formed. This is a very strategic location that used to give a lot of kind of funding to the Maoist. Then in Jharkhand, you will see there are two major factions came up: the Revolutionary People's Front and the People's Liberation Front of India. Okay. And that is how the source from which the Maoists actually get lot of extortion money, lot of Nazarana, if I can use this thing, kind of protection money from the industrial setups, the membership drive, and they used to be the kind of middlemen for the Adivasi and the tribal selling their forest products in the market. What has happened over the years, especially, if you see there is a marked difference in the NDA 2 kind of, policy. One clause that the Modi government in 2015 came up with, that ensuring the entitlements and the rights of the tribals and the local community. And that when Joel Oram was the tribal development minister, So that was the time when you see 2015 onwards, there has been a marked change in terms of, giving the tribals their due. Yeah. Okay, some of the land has been given to the tribal. Their forest products they can sell in the market. There is no contractor and the Maoist. Okay, so that in that process, the Maoists have lost out a lot of revenue that they used to actually generate from all these things.
Now, I would like to come to a topic which normally mainstream media doesn't discuss, and even most of the national media, a sizable chunk of national media don't have any idea even. Even as Maoists argue that they don't believe in religion. In Odisha, there is a missionary Maoist nexus, and I'm saying it because I myself have done research on this subject. Intelligence reports suggest that a US-based Pentecostal church had funded the Maoists for the 2008 killing of revered Hindu monk Swami Laxmanananda Saraswati. Would you like to comment something on this?
Yeah, this is a fact. Okay, and this nexus was not there. I think it is no more there, but it was there very much in 2007-8. Okay. And this is someone who was actively participated in killing Swami Laxmanananda Saraswati. Okay, this was directly from the horse mouth, and this is the one who had gone with the Maoist and killed him. Okay, and the Pentecostals are in the Kandhamal. They are the reason behind all sorts of not only the Maoist nexus but creating a communal kind of divide in the peace-loving tribal community in Kandhamal. Okay. So the Pentecostals actually, if I can share with you, okay, this is what I learned from the surrendered Maoist in Raigada, in Kandhamal and all that. They are of the opinion that the Pentecostal churches had actually come to the Maoist and they have promised some 300 to 400 tribal boys to join the Maoist fold. Okay, provided, the Maoist help them to get rid of the leader there, Hindu Mahasabha or Vishwa Hindu Parishad leader in Kandhamal. Okay, and this is exactly what has happened during the Kandhamal, because there is a Christian Pentecostal link in killing this thing, and the Maoists actually were used as an instrument killing that. So this paper I had read maybe 2014-15, okay, in Allen University in US. Okay, so I had claimed this thing that how certain missionaries are actively involved in creating the communal divide. Okay, not only that, they are also very much hand in gloves with the extra state organizations like the Maoist and all that. Okay, and that is where one can attribute a lot of violence to the Pentecostal. Okay, in structural, in a very, very latent, very, very subtle form, and in this particular case, very openly. Okay, so the nexus of the Maoist and the missionary, the Christian missionary especially, okay, it's an open secret, and I don't know why the mainstream media is silent about it.
Yeah, and my sources have suggested that massive funding came from Pentecostals to Maoists in Odisha via that Hawala route, and which is massive. When I'm saying massive funding, and that was precisely the reason. Like that time during post Swami Laxmanananda killing, there was a spike in Maoist movements in Odisha. You must have followed as a very keen observer of Maoism.
A little slightly different thing. Okay. The killing of Laxmanananda Saraswati is a major kind of watershed movement in the Maoist thing, especially in Odisha. After the killing and that followed by the communal kind of violence in Kandhamal. Okay, that is a major reason why there was a split in the Maoist. Okay, some people like Sabyasachi Pandit they realized that mistake to the extent that they should not have gone by the Pentecostals. They should not have brought religion to that. Okay, but then there is people like Ganapati and all these, the erstwhile General Secretary of Maoist. They had no repentance. Okay, that is where there was a kind of a split of opinion, and that was one of the major, not the reason, but one of the major reasons why there was a kind of a split. Because and then the funding part, what you say. that the funding that the Maoist group, actually CPI Maoist, received, that was also kept in dark to many of the Maoist leaders. The regional leaders like Sabyasachi Panda and parts of Gadchiroli and all these leaders, they didn't know the amount of money that came to the organization. Okay, and many people say that the kind of money that came, that didn't go to the jungles where the Maoists actually have the control, but it went to some of the suburbs where the so-called the kind of the leaders or the ideologues of the Maoists are actually operating from. Okay. So one can see that the people who are fighting or the for so-called justice and all that in the jungle, most of the times they are not aware of what they are fighting for.
According to a Stanford report, Pakistan's ISI has forged an alliance with the Maoists in India to destabilize the Indian state. Your comment, please.
No. This is. I think the Pakistan ISI. This is to be a narrative security, very normal narrative.
I'm quoting the Stanford report.
Yeah. See, I'll tell you, with all the respect to the Stanford guys, they do not understand India. Okay, so that is one problem. They do not understand South Asia also. Okay, but I can tell you one who has done. Okay, you can see my book in the militant groups in South Asia. Okay, since the objectives are the same, or more or less the same, another ISI to create a disturbance here and the Maoists to challenge a democratic form of governance. Okay, it sounds very convincing that both of them could have some kind of an alliance. But in my research, I find that the ISI, when it comes to the Islamic fundamentalist groups and the terrorist groups, militant groups and all that, yes, there is a connection because these facts are well established. But when it comes to the Maoist, I think the Composa kind of forum, coordination committee of the Maoist parties in South Asia and all that, or on that, we had a. In South Asia, all the Maoist parties, starting from Bhutan, Purba Bangla Communist Party in Bangladesh to Communist Party in Nepal, they had a kind of connection. Okay, but then to say that the ISI, I doubt it.
Anshuman, attacks after attacks, the Maoists have snuffed out the lives of countless security personnel. Do you consider them as terrorists? This is my straight question. Do you consider them as terrorists?
Yes, I do, because anybody who takes the law into hands and believes in a very violent way of achieving power, this is a stated objective of the Maoist. I don't think why they cannot be called so. Okay, that is one. Okay, the second is it's not attacks after attacks. The attacks has gone down drastically. Okay. If you see the forums like South Asia Terrorism Portal and my book Militant Groups in South Asia, we have termed them so. Okay, so that way one should not confuse it. But the problem lies when some people sort of say that they are the ones who are representing the tribals and all that. Okay, so that needs to be further investigated and say that how much do they represent and where exactly they do represent. Okay, so those questions need to be addressed. Okay.
Now let's discuss about the government strategy. What the government is doing at present. Both the center and the state, they are coming together in the fight against Maoists. And government of India, I think couple of years back, when Rajnath Singh was the Home Minister, that time the government of India had worked on a Samadhan. Samadhan is an acronym over here, which includes integrated strategy, unified coordination, and command to wipe out Maoism. You must have seen the documents in detail. So how do you see it? And after the new Home Minister Amit Shah ji, do you see any change in the government strategy in the fight against Maoism?
I don't think there is a change in the government policy from Samadhan to from Rajnath to Amit Shah.
Yeah, it remains the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a continuity. Okay. but that is a continuity. And but somewhere I just feel that just because the Maoist violence rates, the problem is that we see the success or the failure of the Maoist or the government, based on how much or how many of the incidents actually Maoist-related violent incidents actually take place. And that is where, and this has been a commonality of the governments, different governments in actually assessing their performance against the Maoists. I personally feel that's a faulty way of assessing the government's performance against the Maoists. The assessment should be on the based on the complete absence of the Maoists in the peace-loving tribal areas. To that extent, I think the government also, because as they have spelled out it very clearly, that they want to ensure the rights and the entitlement of the tribal and other marginalized groups in these areas. That's a wonderful. No other government has ever kind of promised this. So to that extent, this has given a sense of kind of empowerment to the local people. The loss of the legitimacy and the popular support of the Maoist can a lot of it can be attributed to this particular policy. The 40,000, 50,000 odd land records being provided to the tribal families in different states is a remarkable thing this government has done. But at the same time, a lot to be done to win the hearts of the people, because not the Maoists but the tribals and the other marginalized people are our own people, right?
And my last question: Maoists in India disintegrating, and is the Maoist movement in India at its last leg?
It is at the last leg, but at the same time, this last leg can continue for another 30-40 years if you do not actually engage with it. This can remain as a irritant, if not a major challenge. If this is not addressed. It can remain as an irritant.
Anshuman, thank you so much for a very detailed discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining with Pulse.
Thanks for having me.